Who is Gwayne Hightower? House of the Dragon explained. Warning. Spoiler warning. This video contains spoilers for House of the Dragon and George R.R. Martin's Fire and Blood, including Gwayne Hightower's role in the Dance of the Dragons. If you've been watching House of the Dragon and wondering who Gwayne Hightower really is, you're not alone. He's not a dragon rider, he's not a king, and he's nowhere near as politically powerful as his father, Otto Hightower. But Gwayne has quietly become one of the more interesting members of House Hightower. He's the brother of Queen Alicent, the son of Otto Hightower, and a knight fighting for the green cause. And as the war becomes more brutal, Gwayne is starting to look very different from the arrogant young knight we first met. So who exactly is Gwayne Hightower? Why is he so important to Alicent? What is his relationship with Criston Cole? And, most importantly, what happens to Gwayne during the Dance of the Dragons? Let's break it all down. 1. Who is Gwayne Hightower? Gwayne Hightower is a knight from one of the most powerful families in Westeros. He's the son of Otto Hightower and the brother of Alicent Hightower. That means he's directly connected to the Green faction through his family. In the television series, Gwayne is played by Freddie Fox, while a younger version of the character appeared briefly in Season 1. Unlike Otto, Gwayne isn't primarily a politician. He's a soldier. His identity is built around being a knight and serving his family. And that's important because the Dance of the Dragons eventually forces him to confront something very different from traditional warfare. He discovers what happens when ordinary knights are caught in a war dominated by dragons. 2. Gwayne and Alicent Hightower. One of the most important relationships in Gwayne's story is his relationship with Alicent. He's not just her brother. He's one of the few members of her family who can speak to her as an equal. Their relationship gives us a different side of Alicent. Gwayne sees the emotional cost of the war affecting his sister. And Alicent, in turn, trusts him enough to discuss matters involving her children and her family. This is especially important when they talk about Daeron, Alicent's youngest son. Gwayne has a positive view of Daeron and appears to be proud of the young prince. That relationship becomes increasingly important as the Hightower army moves deeper into the war. 3. Gwayne wasn't always the same person. When we first see Gwayne, he's arrogant, he's confident, and he's very much the stereotypical highborn knight. During the Heirs tournament in Season 1, he enters the competition and ends up facing Prince Daemon Targaryen. Daemon humiliates him during the joust. It's a relatively small moment, but it establishes Gwayne as someone who is proud of his position and his family status. However, the war changes him, and one of the biggest reasons is Rook's Rest. 4. The Battle of Rook's Rest changes Gwayne. Gwayne eventually joins Criston Cole's military campaign, and then he witnesses what dragon warfare actually looks like. This is very different from fighting another knight with a sword. At Rook's Rest, dragons turn the battlefield into a nightmare. Men who have trained their entire lives for battle can simply disappear beneath dragon fire. Gwayne survives, but the experience changes him. The confident knight we saw earlier becomes much more serious. He begins to understand that the traditional ideas of honor and warfare don't mean much when dragons are involved. This is one of the reasons his relationship with Criston Cole becomes so interesting. 5. Gwayne Hightower versus Criston Cole. Gwayne and Criston are both fighting for the Greens, but they see the war very differently. Criston has become increasingly bitter and fatalistic. After witnessing the destruction caused by dragons, he begins questioning what the war is actually accomplishing. Gwayne, however, continues to hold on to the traditional ideals of knighthood. He believes in duty, honor, and protecting the people around him. That makes the two characters almost like opposites. Criston increasingly believes that honor has become meaningless. Gwayne still wants to believe that being a knight means something. Their relationship becomes especially tense when Gwayne discovers Criston's relationship with Alicent. Gwayne confronts him and is furious that Criston may have dishonored his sister. But Criston explains that Alicent helped prevent him from taking his own life. Gwayne eventually backs down. And this scene reveals something important. Underneath his pride, Gwayne genuinely cares about Alicent. 6. Gwayne is more compassionate than he appears. This is one of the biggest changes in his character. At first, Gwayne looks like another arrogant nobleman, but as the war progresses, we see that he has a conscience. He's disturbed by the suffering caused by the conflict. He doesn't seem to enjoy cruelty. And unlike some of the more ruthless Green leaders, Gwayne still believes there should be limits. That's why his character works so well alongside Criston. Criston represents what happens when someone loses faith in the ideals of knighthood. Gwayne represents someone desperately trying to hold on to those ideals. And the war keeps testing him. 7. What is Gwayne's relationship with Daeron? This is becoming especially important in Season 3. Daeron is Alicent's youngest son. He was raised in Old Town under the care of House Hightower rather than at the Red Keep. Gwayne has a strong connection with him. He sees Daeron as a good young man and seems to genuinely care about his future. That creates an interesting dynamic within House Hightower. Gwayne wants to protect Daeron, but other members of the family have very different ideas about how Daeron should be used in the war. Recent comments from Freddie Fox have highlighted differences between Gwayne and Ormond Hightower over how Daeron should be influenced. Fox has described Gwayne as more chivalrous and morally upright, while Ormond is portrayed as more politically calculating. That could become extremely important as the Hightower army moves toward Tumbleton. 8. Gwayne and the Green Army. Gwayne is not simply sitting in King's Landing while the war happens. He's actively involved in the military campaign. He travels with Criston Cole and the Green Forces. He witnesses battles. He experiences the destruction caused by dragons. And eventually, his path becomes connected with the Hightower army under Ormond. This is a major difference between the show's version of Gwayne and the character from Fire and Blood. The television series has expanded his role significantly. In the book, Gwayne's story ends much earlier. In the show, he's still alive and involved in the war. That means HBO has created a lot more possibilities for his future. 9. What happens to Gwayne in Fire and Blood? Now for the major book spoilers. In Fire and Blood, Gwayne doesn't have the long military storyline that the television series has given him. During the dance, he's appointed second in command of the City Watch in King's Landing. His job is connected to protecting the Green regime and keeping an eye on possible disloyalty within the City Watch. But when Rhaenyra eventually takes King's Landing, Gwayne's fate is sealed. He's betrayed by Sir Luther Largent, the commander of the City Watch. Gwayne is killed before Rhaenyra's forces fully take control of the city. So, in the book, his story ends in King's Landing. But the HBO series has already changed this, and that is extremely important. 10. The show has completely changed Gwayne's fate. The television version of Gwayne is now far more involved in the war. Instead of simply remaining in King's Landing, he's been sent into the field. He's connected to Criston Cole's campaign, he's connected to Daeron, and he's connected to the Hightower army. This means the show is no longer locked in to the exact book ending, and that's something viewers should remember when predicting his future. House of the Dragon uses Fire and Blood as its source material, but it has already changed major character arcs. Gwayne is one of the clearest examples. The book kills him relatively early. The show has deliberately kept him alive and developed him. So why? There are several possibilities. 11. Could Gwayne become important at Tumbleton? This is where things get very interesting. The story is moving toward Tumbleton, one of the most important locations in the Dance of the Dragons. The Hightower forces are heavily involved. Daeron becomes increasingly important, and the infamous Dragon Seed betrayal is approaching. Gwayne's continued presence around these characters could allow the show to give him a much larger role than he had in the book. It doesn't necessarily mean HBO will copy every event from Fire and Blood. In fact, the show's treatment of Gwayne suggests the opposite. His survival may allow him to participate in events that originally belonged to other characters. and that could have major consequences for the Green storyline. 12. Why Gwayne matters more than you think. Gwayne doesn't have a dragon. He doesn't control armies like Otto. He isn't a master manipulator like some of the other players. So why keep him around? Because Gwayne represents something the series increasingly needs: the ordinary human cost of the war. The Targaryens have dragons. The Hightowers have political power. But Gwayne is still a knight. He has to walk onto battlefields. He has to watch people die. And he has to live with the consequences. That makes his perspective different. He shows us what the war looks like from the ground. Not from the back of a dragon, but from underneath one. 13. Gwayne could become the future of House Hightower. There's another possibility worth watching. House Hightower is losing people. Otto is gone. The war is destroying the family. Ormond is now leading the Hightower forces. Daeron is becoming increasingly important. And if more members of the family die, Gwayne could become one of the last major Hightowers standing. That would make him far more important than he initially appeared. He could become a leader. He could become responsible for protecting Daeron. Or he could eventually inherit a much greater position within House Hightower. Nothing about his exact future should be treated as confirmed yet. Final thoughts. So, who is Gwayne Hightower? He's the son of Otto Hightower, the brother of Alicent Hightower, a knight of House Hightower, and one of the Green faction's increasingly important military figures. But his story is much more complicated than simply being another Hightower loyalist. Gwayne begins as an arrogant young knight who believes strongly in his family's status. But the Dance of the Dragons changes him. Rook's Rest shows him the true horror of dragon warfare. His relationship with Criston Cole exposes the difference between traditional honor and the brutal reality of war. And his relationship with Alicent and Daeron shows that underneath all his pride, Gwayne genuinely cares about his family. The biggest question now is what the show plans to do with him, because in Fire and Blood, Gwayne's story ends in King's Landing. He's killed when Rhaenyra's forces take the city. But House of the Dragon has already taken his character in a completely different direction. He's alive, he's fighting, he's connected to Daeron, and he's moving towards some of the most important events of the dance. So the big question isn't simply who is Gwayne Hightower, it's why did HBO keep him alive? Could Gwayne become one of the key Hightowers during the final stages of the war? Could he play a major role at Tumbleton? Could his relationship with Daeron change the future of House Hightower? Or will the show eventually bring him back toward the tragic fate recorded in Fire and Blood? Whatever happens, Gwayne Hightower has gone from a minor character in the background to someone worth watching very closely. Because in a war where kings, queens, and dragons dominate the story, sometimes the most interesting characters are the ones standing on the ground, trying to survive it. Let me know what you think about Gwayne Hightower in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this House of the Dragon breakdown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more character explanations, book comparisons, hidden details, and Dance of the Dragons theories.